101 to 46. Let that number breathe for a second. A 55-point margin of victory in an internationally broadcast basketball game. Not a scrimmage, not a glorified exhibition. A real, fully televised FIBA Women's World Cup qualifying game where a nationally funded, professionally trained basketball program just got completely, systematically dismantled. And the most important part of this story is not the final score sitting on that board. The most important part is who was standing right in the middle of that result. Caitlin Clark, wearing a Team USA jersey, playing her very first game as an official starter for the United States senior national team. Because when you understand what she just came back from, what she just added to her game, and what this performance signals about where women's basketball is heading.
New Zealand finally in the starting lineup. It took long enough. It took long enough. Stephanie White, I know your skin was crawling when you saw her in the starting lineup. I know you didn't like that. Caitlin Clark led Team USA to a more than 50.
The 101 to 46 becomes way more than a lopsided scoreline. It becomes a declaration. And if you're a defensive coordinator anywhere in the WNBA right now, it becomes something a lot closer to a genuine problem. We're going to break down every layer of what happened in that game, what it means going forward, and exactly why the sport looks different on the other side of this tournament. Make sure you stay until the mid-range development section because that is the part most people completely glossed over, and it changes everything about how you think about defending her. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. The conversation happening in women's basketball in 2026 is unlike anything this sport has seen before, and you do not want to miss a single piece of it. Before we get into what happened against New Zealand, we have to talk about where Caitlin Clark was just a few months ago, because the version of her that stepped onto that floor in San Juan, Puerto Rico, was not supposed to be here this quickly. Not after everything her body went through in 2025. The 2025 WNBA season was supposed to be the year she took the next significant step forward. Coming off a rookie campaign that completely rewired the viewership numbers and sponsorship economics of the entire league, every eye in sports was locked onto what she would do in year two. Then the injuries started. First a left quad issue, then a left groin strain, then the right groin, then a left ankle injury in early August during an individual workout that ultimately ended her season entirely. For separate issues, each one stacking on top of the last. By the time everything added up, she had played just 13 games in the full season. 13 games. In an entire WNBA schedule, she managed 13 appearances before her body forced her to stop. She talked publicly about how brutal that process was. The challenge was never just one injury that needed to heal. It kept compounding. One thing would almost get better, and then something else would activate, and the ankle injury in August just cut off any remaining path back. Anyone who has gone through a long-term injury understands exactly how that mental weight adds up alongside the physical one. In December of 2025, she finally resurfaced at a USA basketball camp in Durham, North Carolina. And her message was direct. She was at 100%, not working through it, not managing soreness. 100%. She had not played a competitive game in 239 days when she arrived in San Juan. 239 days of silence, rehab, and preparation. And then she walked back onto a basketball floor and reminded everyone why no amount of time off changes what she is.
Passes are going to be there. You know what I'm saying? This is why they need to start her. Forget all that seniority stuff and all that. This is the best point guard in the world. Why are we starting anybody else? It doesn't even make sense. Look at his pad.
The debut that set the tone before the New Zealand game even tipped off. The game against New Zealand was not actually her first appearance in this tournament. Her senior national team debut came on March 11th against Senegal. And even coming off the bench in that first game, even in a situation where she was being eased back in after 8 months away from competitive play, what she did was absurd. In 20 minutes of action, she dropped 17 points and 12 assists. Off the bench, 17 points and 12 assists in 20 minutes of work in her first competitive appearance in over 200 days. She shot 4 of 5 from three-point range, went 5 for 5 from the free throw line, and personally accounted for 38 total points when you factor in all the baskets she created for teammates. Senegal scored 46 points as an entire team. She, by herself, was responsible for nearly that same number in less than half the game. She set up 7 different teammates in that single performance. 7. She found Monique Billings, Ryan Howard, Kelsey Plum, Kiki Iriafin, Paige Bueckers, Angel Reese, and Kalia Copper, each of them on the receiving end of a Clark assist before the game was done. That is not just excellent passing. That is a point guard who processes the entire floor like she has already seen every defensive rotation before it happens.
She do it all. She literally, Caitlin Clark has added to her bag. I don't know if y'all know, Caitlin Clark has added to her bag. It's about to get spooky. It's about to get so spooky for these WNBA teams.
The message was delivered before the New Zealand game even started. Whatever doubts existed about her returning rusty or tentative after months away, those doubts dissolved somewhere in the first quarter against Senegal. She came back like she had never left. Actually, she came back like she had spent 8 months doing nothing but getting sharper, which it turns out is exactly what she was doing. The starting lineup decision that changed the entire tone. For the New Zealand game, head coach Kara Lawson made the call. Caitlin Clark was in the starting 5. This was not automatically guaranteed heading into the game. Lawson had been openly honest about her process from the very beginning of the tournament. She said she was in fact-finding mode, not questioning the talent of her players, but actively working to understand what combinations clicked in real game situations, what chemistry looked like under actual competitive pressure. Against Senegal, veteran guards held starting positions, and Clark came in off the bench. She still nearly stole the entire show. For New Zealand, the approach changed. Clark moved from the bench into the opening lineup. And the minute that decision was made, the entire strategic reality of the game shifted. Not because the other players were not excellent. They absolutely were. But when Caitlin Clark is on the floor from the opening tip, every single defensive decision the other team makes is under a completely different kind of pressure.
Second group, they absolutely, like, that second group went off. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. Chelsea Gray still starting. I don't know why. Chelsea Gray does not need to be a starter. It is what it is, man.
They have to account for her immediately. Their entire defensive scheme has to be built with a contingency for what she creates. That is a tax on opposing preparation that no other player in women's basketball currently charges at the same rate. The result of that starting lineup decision was a 55-point margin of victory against a professional international team. Nothing about that is coincidental. 23 minutes, 14 points, 6 assists, and the plus 24 nobody is talking about. Let's get into the actual numbers from the New Zealand game. In 23 minutes on the floor, Caitlin Clark scored 14 points, dished out 6 assists, grabbed 1 rebound, and recorded 2 steals. She shot 6 of 11 from the field, 2 of 7 from three-point range, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the free throw line. On paper, that is a good, efficient performance for 23 minutes of work. But if you stop at the box score, you are completely missing what actually happened out there. The number that tells the real story is her plus-minus. When Caitlin Clark was on the court against New Zealand, Team USA outscored New Zealand by 24 points in those 23 minutes alone, plus 24. That means every single time she stepped between those lines, the scoreboard gap grew at a rate that made the game statistically unwinnable for the opposition. She was not just scoring. She was reshaping the entire geometry of the floor around her, pulling defenders into positions that created open lanes, making passes that should not exist at the angles and speeds at which she delivers them. Think about what that actually looks like in practice. The moment she catches the ball in transition, the defense is already reacting. Help rotations begin early because every defender knows the range she operates at. Lanes open for her teammates that would not exist for any other point guard on the planet, not through plays drawn up in timeouts, but simply through the defensive attention her presence demands at all times. Her teammates operate in spaces that Clark's gravity creates by existing on the same court. She controlled the pace. She decided when the game accelerated and when it breathed. She made every right decision without forcing a single thing. And she did all of this in the kind of high-profile game where a less composed player might press, might try to make a personal statement, might chase a big individual number. Instead, she played within the game, made the correct read every time, and the entire operation looked completely effortless. That is the gap between very good and elite. Elite looks easy even when it is not. The new weapon that makes her genuinely unguardable. This is the section most people casually skip past, and it might be the single most important development in women's basketball heading into the 2026 WNBA season. Everyone already knows about the three-point shooting, the logo threes, the pull-up from 35 feet off the dribble that drops through the net like she is standing 5 feet from the basket. That deep ball has always been her most discussed weapon, and rightfully so. She led the entire WNBA in three-pointers made as a rookie and forced defensive schemes across the league to completely reorganize themselves just to try to contain her range. But here is what changed during those 8 months away from competitive basketball. Clark worked specifically and intensively on one area of her game that she openly admitted was a weakness before this: the mid-range, the floater. The pull-up from 15 feet inside the arc. Working alongside Indiana Fever player development coach Keith Porter, she dedicated serious, focused time to building something she did not previously have in a reliable form: a consistent, efficient weapon in the middle zone of the court. She admitted why this was necessary. She said she would get uncomfortable operating in that space. She did not have a trustworthy floater. She did not feel confident in her mid-range pull-up the way she trusted everything else about her game. And that vulnerability was visible to scouts. Smart defensive coordinators across the WNBA were already building specific schemes around it, particularly the drop coverage, where the big man sags back off the pick and roll to protect the rim and the mid-range area, daring her to attack the middle instead of stepping back for the three. That coverage is now a strategic dead end, because when you add a biomechanically sharp, late rotation mid-range pull-up to a player who already has every defender scrambling to the three-point line the moment she touches the ball, there is no remaining coverage that makes defensive sense. If you go under the screen to guard the paint and the mid-range, she steps back and launches from 35 feet. If you go over the screen to eliminate the three, she snakes the pick and roll, stops on a dime with sharp deceleration, and pulls up from 15 before your big man can recover. There is no right answer anymore. She has permanently eliminated the final viable defensive option that teams have been relying on. This is not a minor adjustment. In basketball terms, adding a reliable mid-range to a player who already commands full defensive attention from logo range is the equivalent of a chess player gaining a new piece that the rulebook did not previously account for. Defensive coordinators across the WNBA are looking at their playbooks right now and finding that the specific section built to contain her just became invalid. Now let's talk about what happens when she's not even the most dangerous option on the floor at the exact same moment. Because in San Juan, both of them were out there simultaneously. Paige Bueckers logged 24 minutes against New Zealand, the most of any player on the team. She finished with 7 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists. And much like Clark's plus-minus told a deeper story than her scoring line, Bueckers' impact went well beyond those box score numbers. Bueckers moves off the basketball at a level most viewers do not fully register when watching casually. She reads defensive positioning before the ball even reaches her side of the floor. She exploits gaps in a defense the moment they open, sometimes before they fully open, because her processing speed on the court is elite. She is fully capable of creating her own shot anywhere on the floor, but she also consistently makes the unselfish read when a teammate has the better opportunity. When you place Bueckers and Clark in the same backcourt simultaneously, the defense faces a calculation with no correct answer. Both of them initiate. Both of them are elite passers who get more dangerous when the other is drawing defensive attention. Both of them punish you from the three-point line and off the bounce. Every rotation is wrong against at least one of them. You can shade your scheme toward Clark, and Bueckers exploits it. You can shade toward Bueckers, and Clark dissects you from wherever she pleases. This partnership was brand new in San Juan. This tournament marked the first time they competed together at the senior national level, and they already operated with the kind of shared rhythm that usually takes years to develop. The offense moved differently when both of them were on the floor, fluid, connected, and constantly threatening from angles that had no obvious defensive solution. That backcourt combination is going to be discussed for a very long time. Ryan Howard, and the bench unit that buried any remaining hope. If you were part of the New Zealand program, the starting unit alone was already a serious enough problem. But then the substitutions happened, and whatever slim hope the remaining minutes might have offered disappeared almost immediately. Ryan Howard walked off that bench and delivered one of the most coldly efficient shooting performances of the entire tournament. 18 points, 6 of 10 from behind the three-point line, 60% from deep on volume attempts. That is not a lucky hot streak. That is a trained, disciplined shooter operating at a precision level where every small defensive miscommunication by the opposition gets punished with another made three. Howard plays with an edge. Like every shot is a direct response to a specific mistake the defense just made, and she is making sure they understand the cost of it. Against a New Zealand team already scrambling to adjust to everything Clark and Bueckers have been doing, Howard was picking them apart from the perimeter without any hesitation and without any mercy. Then add Monique Billings going 5 for 7 from the field, 10 points and 6 rebounds. Quiet, efficient, 0 wasted possessions. And Kiki Iriafen, who shot over 66% from the field for 9 points and 8 rebounds, providing interior presence that complemented everything happening on the perimeter. This is what legitimate depth looks like. These are not role players filling minutes and protecting a lead. These are players who would command starting positions on most international rosters, coming off the bench for Team USA and continuing to extend a gap that was already enormous. The second unit did not maintain a lead. They grew it. And that kind of depth is exactly what championship programs are built on. While the perimeter was doing relentless damage, Angel Reese was doing something equally important inside. In 17 intensely physical minutes, she posted 9 points, 4 rebounds, and made it unmistakably clear that the paint was not a place New Zealand could safely operate. Reese plays basketball as a full contact in position. Every contested rebound is a battle she enters with the expectation of winning. Every time a New Zealand forward considered driving the lane, Reese was already positioned to make that decision as uncomfortable as physically possible. She generates extra possessions through offensive rebounding. She breaks down opposing front courts through sheer physical attrition, and she brings an intensity to every second on the floor that does not decrease when the game is out of reach. Holding a fully funded professional international basketball team to 46 points across 4 full quarters is not just good defense. It is psychological. There's a point in a game like that where the opposing team stops believing they can score, where every possession feels hopeless before it fully develops, where the entire group knows the shot is probably not going in before it even leaves anyone's hands. Reese's physical dominance of the interior was a significant part of what created that collapse. Combined with the perimeter pressure of Howard, Clark, and Bueckers cutting off every escape route on the outside, there was nowhere to go. The veteran lineup debate that is not going away. Now, the conversation that kept running underneath the surface throughout this entire tournament. The starting lineup discussion. Because as dominant as Team USA was, there was an ongoing undercurrent of debate about how specific veteran players fit alongside the new generation, particularly at the guard position. This is not a conversation about disrespecting anyone's career or legacy. Chelsea Gray has one of the most accomplished resumes in the history of women's basketball. Multiple WNBA championships, Olympic gold medals, a career that belongs on any serious all-time great list at the guard position. Nothing about the current conversation takes any of that away from her. But the discussion about fit and pace is real, and it is not going away. The style of game that Clark plays, the pace at which she pushes the tempo, the distance from which she operates, the speed of the offensive decisions she demands from teammates, runs on a different frequency than what traditional guard play looks like. The question is not about talent. It is about which combinations on the floor produce the most efficient basketball at the highest pace. Kara Lawson was transparent about this throughout the tournament. She openly said the lineups would keep changing because she was still learning what worked together in real game situations. That is not a criticism of any individual. That is a coach being honest about her process. But the results from the New Zealand game, 55 points plus 24 from Clark, specifically 60% three-point shooting from the bench, made a very loud argument for what the most dangerous configuration of this roster looks like when it is fully unleashed. The 2026 WNBA season is coming, and Clark is entering it as a different player. Here is the part that should have every WNBA front office running urgent film sessions. Caitlin Clark has never played a complete, healthy WNBA season. Not a single one. Her 2024 rookie year was genuinely extraordinary. Rookie of the Year, All-Star selection, viewership records that shattered every existing benchmark for women's professional basketball, and an entirely new audience that came to the sport specifically to watch her. By every reasonable measure, it was one of the most impactful debut seasons the league had ever witnessed. And she did all of it without a developed mid-range game, without the benefit of a full healthy offseason devoted to specific skill building, and while still adjusting to the physical demands of professional basketball. Then 2025 was taken by injuries. 13 games. So here is the genuine, uncomfortable reality for the rest of the league. The world has not yet seen what a completely healthy, fully prepared peak Caitlin Clark looks like across a full WNBA season. The version that just dropped 17 points and 12 assists on her very first senior national team appearance, then came back to orchestrate a 55-point blowout in her first start with a brand new mid-range weapon in her arsenal and 8 months of dedicated development work behind her. That version is arriving for a full WNBA season with something to prove and nothing to hold back. The Indiana Fever are going to be appointment television from the first tip-off of the 2026 season. Every game, not because of what happened in 2024 or what got interrupted in 2025, but because of what this tournament confirmed about who she is right now and where she is headed. And the season is not even the final destination. The 2026 FIBA Women's World Cup is scheduled for September in Berlin, Germany. Team USA already clinched their spot. The tournament in Puerto Rico was about building the right combinations and understanding what this new generation roster looks like under real competitive pressure. What it looks like is deeply complicated for every other nation preparing to face them. Clark, Bueckers, Howard, Reese, and the supporting depth this program has assembled represents the most formidable collection of women's basketball talent brought together in this sport in a very long time. The qualifier was the preview. Berlin is where the full picture gets revealed, what the 101-46 actually means. The scoreline against New Zealand is going to get filed in the record books as a dominant qualifying win and then largely forgotten by the mainstream sports media cycle. Box scores will record it, highlights will run, and then the news moves on. But the people who are paying real attention, who understand what was demonstrated in San Juan across those 5 games, and specifically what was on display against New Zealand, they recognize this was not a footnote. This was a declaration, a live, internationally witnessed declaration of exactly what women's basketball looks like when the most transformative player in the sport's modern era is fully healthy, fully developed in the starting lineup, and operating with tools that nobody had properly scouted yet. Caitlin Clark came back from 239 days away from competition. She debuted with a double-double in 20 minutes off the bench. She moved into the starting lineup and helped produce a 55-point blowout. She showed a new mid-range dimension that did not exist in her public profile before this tournament. She formed a backcourt partnership with Paige Bueckers that has no clean defensive answer. She did all of this as the first act of what is shaping up to be the most significant year in her career so far. The 101-46 was not the statement. It was the opening line of the statement. The rest gets written starting with the 2026 WNBA season, and it is going to read like nothing this sport has produced before. We are sitting at the very beginning of something. The kind of beginning that people will look back on years from now and say, that was the moment it stopped being a conversation. That was the moment it just became the reality. For every team in the WNBA designing their defensive game plans right now, running their scouting reports, rebuilding their coverages, there's one thing they need to understand going in. The player they studied from 2024 is not the player who just walked out of Puerto Rico. She is sharper. She has a new weapon. She spent 8 months with nothing to do but get better. And she has not yet played a complete, healthy, full season of professional basketball at her actual ceiling. That ceiling is somewhere none of us have seen yet. And it is coming. That is the full breakdown of what went down in San Juan and what it means for every piece of the women's basketball calendar ahead of us. The qualifying tournament was the opening act. The WNBA season is next, and then Berlin. If this video gave you something to think about, drop a like right now. It takes 2 seconds and it genuinely helps this kind of in-depth analysis reach the people who care about the game at this level. Subscribe and hit the bell if you're not already on board, because the conversations coming over the next few months are going to be something special. Every week, there will be a new layer to unpack, a new storyline developing, and a new reason to be completely locked into women's basketball. We will see you in the next one.